Hello out there. My name is Lalu Akode and you are on to Inside Sources. But first, here is my take for today, entitled Time for Elite Consensus Part 2. On Friday, I started discussing the imperative of an elite consensus at this stage of our national experience. We reviewed the controversy that followed former President Obasanjo's recent Yale University lecture in the US, where he said Nigeria is now glaringly a failed state. Obasanjo, I argued on Friday, is not free from the responsibilities of our current situation as a country, up or down. Now, I want to dwell more on how especially all of our former presidents and heads of state can possibly lead or encourage the charge to bring about an elite consensus as a way forward for Nigeria. Here, we are especially addressing 6 people and then the incumbent president. The 6 people are General Gowon, General Obasanjo, General Babangida, General Abdulsalami, Dr. Jonathan, and the immediate past president, Muhammadu Buhari. Other eminent Nigerians of goodwill should also join. These former presidents and heads of state, they stand in a certainly rare position. If all of them come together as former leaders with the incumbent, perhaps using the Council of State, in an honest effort to move Nigeria forward, there will be some significant traction and we will result into progress. All of them, including the sitting president, have experienced the limited and exclusive privilege of being the number one citizen one time or the other. And this imposes on them the moral burden and responsibility to demonstrate the highest quality of patriotism available or possible regarding the fate of Nigeria. I think the majority among us Nigerians, we are in agreement that our country is tottering and it's not in the best place now. And this is cumulative over the years. And so each one of these leaders ought not to make light of such a national condition or to make it a subject of pejorative jest. The matter also should not just be a weapon useful in the contest or battle for political power. These leaders can and should rise above such a distraction or temptation at a moment like this. And they should not wait, just like former President Barack Obama said, the urgency of now. Now is the time for them to come together to chart a new course for all of us. Most of our leaders, by either act of omission and or commission, have in part contributed to our current challenges. We should also add that all of them have also surely contributed something worthwhile to their credit. Therefore, it is the view of Inside Sources that under the leadership of General Gowon, who is the oldest living head of state, all of these 6 former leaders should come together and advocate for an elite consensus. An elite consensus where, according to Dr. Sam Amadi, who wrote in an article in This Day in 2021, he defined the issues like this. He said, the consensus is about changing the society towards a productive economy. Without a consensus on a development agenda, development will not happen, unquote. Similarly, the Business Day newspaper, in a September 2021 editorial, also on elite consensus, had this to say, and I quote, elite consensus refers to a situation in which members of the elite are unanimous about the fundamental norms of the social system. The editorial continued, as a group, they will agree on the basic rules of the game and the imperative of preserving the political and social system, unquote. Let me add that we mean the establishment and preservation of a social and political system that seeks the welfare and the security of the masses of our people. If that requires changes to our laws and regulations, let those issues be tabled. And this is where we need the leadership of our former presidents today. Finally, we also know that Professor Atairu Jega, the former chairman of INEC and former vice chancellor of the Bayero University, Kano, with some other colleagues, have quietly commenced preparing the groundwork and the empirical basis of an elite consensus to move Nigeria forward. Some of us are part of that effort. This is the kind of progressive advocacy that we want our former presidents like Chief Obasanjo to be committed to. not just political jostling, because political jostling will not, in the end, give us the change that we require. So again, we call on Generals Gowon, Obasanjo, Babangida, Abdulsalami, Buhari, and Dr. Jonathan to lead and encourage the effort to give Nigeria an elite consensus. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should then support and work with them. The 1999 Constitution already offers a veritable platform that the president can use, the Council of State. Can we do this? Why not? And there you have it. Inside Sources will be right back. Welcome back to Inside Sources as we continue the conversation on the future of Nigeria. Today I have a most eminent Nigerian, somebody that needs little or no introduction, Professor Ibrahim Agbola Gambari, an Ilorin Prince, the former External Affairs Minister, a former Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Nigeria to the United Nations, former Under-Secretary General of the United Nations, and the only African to have led the Department of Political Affairs at the United Nations, and most recently, the former Chief of Staff to the President of Nigeria. Now, he was also the chairman at the UN of the Committee Against Apartheid, and they worked to end apartheid not only in South Africa, but entirely in Southern Africa, and also ensure the release of Nelson Mandela. So I'm very delighted to welcome to Inside Sources, Professor Ibrahim Agbola Gambari.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here and to support what Laolu Akande is doing, because a true professional. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I wanted to start, first of all, to wish you happy birthday, because today also happens to be your birthday, your 80th birthday. So I wanted to ask you, what's the secret of you at 80 looking as if you and I are brothers?
Well, number one, the glory to Almighty God. And a feeling that I have had tremendous opportunities that is not always available to many. As a matter of fact, I often say that I have more than my fair share of Allah's blessings, because I grew up in Ilorin, went to school in 2 village schools before coming back to...
An Ilorin Prince in a village school?
Yeah, absolutely. Because my parents then felt that if I stayed in Ilorin, I would probably be playing around and not concentrating on my studies. So I think there's something about village that concentrates your mind.
And was this an Islamic school, a private school?
No, it was by the Ilorin Native Authority.
Well, that's a public school.
It's a public school. Both it was class 1 to 4 and then 4 to 6 before going on to another secondary school, which was also a Ilorin Native Authority provincial secondary school. But of course, by that time, getting grants from the then Northern government to pay for the salaries of the largely expatriate staff who are our teachers.
Wow. Interesting. So what was the secret of longevity? Because, I mean, if you clock 80, it's actually a major milestone in your view.
It is, and thanks for reminding me that I'm getting old. That's why the pretense that not to look it. But again, really it's Allah's blessings. But a sense of contentment, a feeling that I've been privileged to make a contribution to the development of this country, but also to touch many people's lives. That is what has always given me that feeling that, yes, life has been worthwhile. And I must also add, since you're asking me a very personal question, with malice to none. Of course, nobody is perfect. I'm definitely not perfect, but I've never stressed myself going after anybody. And I've always felt that even those with whom I do not agree, I do not hold it as if it's permanent. Because in fact, in my professional life, I've also discovered that there are really no permanent friends or permanent enemies, or only permanent interests. And your enemy today could very well become your greatest admirer tomorrow. So, and I also learned that from one of the people that I work with, Brutus Gali, the first African or the first Secretary General of the UN from Africa.
From Africa, yeah.
Who said to me that 100 friends are not enough and one enemy may be too many.
One enemy may be too many.
Because that one enemy that may actually do you in. And I guess he was speaking from experience because you recall that in the Security Council, he had the whole of Africa said he should get a second term. At the summit meeting, they passed that resolution. Then the Security Council, including all the permanent members except one, 14 out of 15 said Brutus Gali should go, but one enemy whom he has offended or thought he had offended them said no, and that was the end of his the first Secretary General who did not have a second term.
Wow, interesting. Well, we're going to get to quite a bit of some of this international stuff because that's also one of your forte. But I wanted to start from, some of the reflections that I have been going through and some of our guests here have spoken about, and it's the question of an elite consensus.
Yeah.
Do you think that Nigeria has gotten to that point? Now, I think, I'll tell you my own view and then you make a comment, sir. I think that we are going to a point where, especially some of our former presidents and heads of states need to come together as one to begin to talk about what we need to do in terms of a cross-sectional, bipartisan, cross-regional consensus on the minimum that should be the standards by which Nigeria should not fall below. What do you think about that, Prof?
I feel very strongly about that. Because to become head of state, by whatever means, you have had to transcend your ethnic, religious boundaries. So clearly, by becoming head of state, the entire country is your consistency. Therefore, after having had that privileged position in a country that is now over 200 million, to be head of state of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, is not a joke, and it is not something to be taken lightly. Therefore, after being that, there's a responsibility to really come together as elders to not, at least even the negative way, not to let the place fall. Because your pride should be that you serve a country that continues to make progress.
Exactly.
But beyond former head of states, how about former ministers? How about former ambassadors? Those who have held privileged position in this country, they have a responsibility to help build a sense of direction for our country and to insist on it. If you look at other countries, there's no country where you don't have really some elite who care about their country. They may have political differences, but at critical times, moments, they intervene
and come together.
Put the nation first. Let me give you an example, personal example. When I was going to be appointed as ambassador of Nigeria to the United Nations. Don't forget, I had served a previous government that was overthrown in 1985.
With the Gambari,
and then the same people asked me to come and back as staff of Nigeria. And I must confess, some of the former head of state told me, yes, go for it. First, you are a professional. True, it's a vindication that if we didn't choose right to make you Minister of Foreign Affairs, and you didn't do well, they will not ask you to come back. So it's a vindication of us, but also a vindication of you. But remember that once there, you are ambassador, not of the current president, but ambassador of Nigeria. Always remember that. And I think, honestly, my belief that those who are the most privileged in this country have a responsibility to protect and preserve that which made them what they are, because ultimately that is what defined you.
Exactly.
And I must say I'm sad that that is not always the case, because we've allowed partisan politics, affiliation, to separate us. Whereas in reality, what unites us are much bigger. And the future of this country, of Africa, of the blood, depends on the success of Nigeria. Because by the year 2050, according to UN statistics data, we may become the third or fourth the most populous country in the world. We're already the most populous in Africa and in the world. So that entity cannot be ignored.
Absolutely.
Cannot. Whether we're a permanent member of the Security Council or not, cannot be ignored. Now, so why don't we now hold that dear to preserve it so that we will fulfill our destiny?
Excellent. And one of the reasons why, in my own reflection, was that, as you know, I'm not a politician.
Yeah.
I serve in an administration that you also serve.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess probably it's your own 5th or 6th national service. And I noticed that, if we focus only on politics,
yes,
we may not be able to transform the country.
Yeah, sure.
And that's why I thought that if these leaders can just come together, I think they will pack a lot of credibility and they can create a positive momentum. And working with the incumbent, say that, look, let's all agree that, this is how the country should go forward.
That's the minimum. Now, I must say, you are right that I've been privileged, and I remind myself, I'm not the most brilliant academician. I'm not the only prince, but I've had a privileged position. But I've seen how is it that I was able to serve 5 heads of state in one tenure as ambassador of Nigeria? It's because I put the interest of Nigeria above everything else. But what I've also observed, including in my last privileged position to serve as the chief of staff to the president of the Federal Republic, is that sadly, some of those who have benefited the most from what this country has to offer, either materially or in terms of status, among them are often the least committed to the stability and the progress of Nigeria. As if they think they benefit more if there's chaos or confusion.
Yeah.
That must change. And in no other country do you find those who are benefiting the most being those behind the instruments of division and instability. Now, having said that, I must also, as a political scientist, say that there's a responsibility of not only the leadership, but also the followership.
Yeah.
And that goes to political education. We have to find a way of really doing a lot more political, particularly closer to elections, so that political parties, we don't pay attention to, in recent times, how political parties are formed, how the leadership emerge, how the political party nominate candidates for various elective
the operations.
Because look at even the First Republic, some of your viewers may not be were too young at that time, but the NPC, the Action Group, the NCNC, these were the major political parties. NEPU, they had membership cards. They pay contribute dues so that the people feel they belong.
This is our home party.
This is our home party.
We fund it.
Even for several reasons alone, where my money goes, I'm going to follow what is happening.
Yeah.
So political education is important. Party formation is important. And then this is everybody's business. Yeah. We have to give leadership, but we must also create an environment in which the so-called common people feel this is an enterprise. But they are so detached, except when it comes to election time. And that's why, at least in my view, that's why when election comes, the populace say the only time we see these characters is when it's election time. So let us squeeze them as much as possible now because after we won't see them again for another 4 years or whatever they did. Now, so we must follow our choices, and we must be, and I believe that it's not late. It's not late. The country, by God's grace, is going to survive.
I believe so too.
Because I believe the Almighty has a purpose for putting that much number of people in this place and to an extent that they cannot be ignored as a factor in the world.
Right. Excellent. And that's my view. As a matter of fact, it's the reason why I do Inside Sources, and that's why I theme it around the future of the country, because I believe that Nigeria has a destiny. And if we don't relent, I believe we will get that destiny. All right. Last week, you gave the Real News anniversary lecture, which I've gone through, quite an excellent speed. And one of the issues that you actually try to articulate is the fact that some of the policies of some of the international agencies has not been boding well for the country. Now, I mean, everybody knows that we are passing through very difficult times. There's hardship in the land. Even the president himself concedes this, So I want you to explain more to our viewers, what the point you are trying to make at that lectures in terms of how we need to develop our own homegrown, oftentimes economic solutions to our problems.
Oh, thanks for raising this issue, because as usual, with due respect to the media, there was the headline was different from the nuance. I was not condemning IMF and World Bank.
Why I didn't mention.
Yeah, exactly, and I couldn't.
I read it
because having worked in the United Nations for 13 years and served my country at the United Nations for 10, for almost close to almost 23 years.
Yes.
I couldn't say, but what I'm saying clearly is that every country has to take and the leadership of the destiny of the country in their hands. And so if, yes, we are part of the international community, yes, we are part of the IMF, World Bank, because we are part of the international system, and that is the financial system. But that was created in the 1945 after the end of World War. So we must fight for their reform, so that they can relate more to our own needs and peculiarity. Just as we are saying, we have to have the United Nations Security Council reform, because it was 1945. The world has changed. The membership of the organization has changed. So now, here's my beef, is that we must be able to adjust and advise IMF, World Bank, to our own circumstances, because the primary responsibility is to Nigeria. No, we are not responsible and will not be held responsible for what IMF does.
Because other countries are responsible for themselves.
Right. So yes, we value them, they are partners, like any so-called development partner. But this is our country. It's the only country we have. As my former boss, when he was head of state military, Nigeria is the only country we can call our own, and we have to service it together. We didn't say, that IMF World Bank must salvage it for us. No, that was the point I'm making. But any time that you try to do that, sadly, the resistance is surprisingly enough, not only from even the IMF or World Bank, but from our own people. For example, I'll tell you that Professor Adedeji, the Secretary General, the late Secretary General of the ECA,
Economic Commission for Africa,
when there was
the body of the UN.
Yes, when we were talking this structural adjustment program, after the regime that I served as minister took over from us, and he said an alternative to structural adjustment program, and he was suggesting how we can domesticate and take ownership of our own economic and program by adjusting. The attack was not just from the IMF, World Bank.
That's true.
But from our own people. And shut it down.
It's late now.
It's late now. Adedeji is late now.
I remember
but one of the longest serving executive secretary of the ECA, Economic Commission of Africa, which was part of the UN system. In fact, many times I have to remind people, we tend to take ECA as if it's our African institution. In fact, it's like the economic think tank of the African Union or the OEU. But in fact, they are UN, but in fact, they are not obliged to even have an African as the head. Because the UN is,
of course, it's an international
organization. So really, bottom line is that IMF, World Bank, they are partners. The developed countries are partners, but this is our country, and therefore, if there's a policy that they advocate or they advise, and we find that it's not working, we should have the freedom to adjust it, because our primary responsibility and of the government is to the people of this country. Now, of course, there are some short-term difficulties and long-term benefit. If that is the case, we must explain to our people constantly, the leadership, that this is a pain that is limited in terms of duration and the long-term benefit, and convince them. Because ultimately, what's the value of policies that the people do not support?
True. What's the value? Exactly. And of course, if you don't understand it, then there's going to be a lot of mistrust and it won't work. Excellent. So let's just dovetail to the future of the country.
Correct.
And I want you to address it on two platforms, two levels: the political and then the international.
Okay.
So let's start with the political. You are an elder statesman. a good part of your 80 years you've been serving this country at home and abroad. What kind of political reforms do you think are the ones that we should prioritize going forward from your experience?
Reform of political parties.
Okay.
Number one. And then we must also begin to minimize the influence of money in our politics. Every country, actually, apart from maybe socialist or communist countries, political parties depends on money,
Yeah,
but it is to campaign,
Yeah.
to
get the message out.
To get the message out, to get your message out. But if the money then dominates who is the candidate, and there's even a price tag, I'm sure your audience will know, as you and I know, that if you want to become a member of House of Representatives or become governor, not to mention president, they will tell you the minimum amount of money you have to have. I don't even want to mention the figures
Exactly.
here.
You even have to pay form to your party,
Yeah,
money for form and all that.
So the issue is not even whether or not you'll be the best. And I believe the way to address that is to really reform our political parties so that there will be real political parties with defined agenda.
Yeah.
Because and I'm speaking free as a Nigerian now, and I believe at 80 I've earned the right.
Absolutely.
Forget my background. As 80, I have the right to say what I feel, that the political parties, almost for the most part, except Labour Party or a few others, they're indistinguishable. And that's why you can cross, you can be APC this morning, by afternoon PDP in the afternoon, and back again in the evening to APC. So what's the difference?
The difference.
Well, why should anybody choose one as opposed to the other? So I'm saying, really, and this has come over many years, that's one. The second is we have to decentralize power. We have to decentralize the power of the central government. Has become so much. We have to find a way of decentralization. It's not necessarily by creating 50 more states, or 200 more local government, but to say those things that could be done competently, education, agriculture, and all of that, to let the states take the lead,
charge.
Take charge. I know that the two main reasons why it's not by accident that power has become so concentrated and it's a prolonged military rule. Because it's order and obedience. They nominate governors, and so on. But now we're in a democracy, and that I sincerely believe that we have to take a second look at that, so that matters that don't need to be exclusive of the federal should go to concurrent. We must strengthen local government authorities. The local government autonomy is a good step, but it's not just about money. Because if you don't strengthen the capacity of the local government and also the process to which people become chairman of local government, you can throw money there, it will go down the drain. And in this connection, I want to really acknowledge the governor of Borno State, Zulum, who invited Savannah Center, center, to come and do training to the newly elected 27 local government chairmen. Because it's one thing to sit in Abuja, beautiful development plan. Borno State has a Borno State development framework. Then another Borno State transformation plan. But how do you bring that to the level of the local government?
True.
So we had a whole week, and I was there, my staff was there. The result we didn't have, we brought, and we sat there and then broke this national development plan. Borno State
and then an engagement
with these 27 heads of local government. By the time we left, they now were saying, wow. So we took budgeting, planning, setting priorities, plan implementation, plan discipline. So we have to strengthen the capacity of the local government in relation to the money more money they are going to get.
Right.
And then we have to lift from the neck of the local government the weight that the state governments put on them. So you ask me, what will be the reform?
Yes.
Political parties, decentralization of power, and then the rules of the game of contestation when come election. We have to have free and fair elections. And don't tell me to define what free. The people know when there's free and fair elections because you see the outcome. When you see the outcome and it doesn't correlate with what could visibly see, so something is wrong here. So electoral reform is priority. Then the decentralization of power. And then the reform of the political parties. And then above all, political education.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for those insightful comments. Before we go to the international platform, I wanted to, since you talked about the decentralization, I wanted to give you a view that I am developing that I believe, and then I want to have your comment. And it's about the concurrent list. Now, there are 2 or at least 3 issues that are on the concurrent list that impact directly on the welfare of the people. Education, health, and agriculture.
Correct.
As a matter of fact, I'm from the former Western region. Not that I was born then, but at least I heard the story. And we still know the impact that somebody like Obafemi Awolowo created just by focusing on those 3 things: free education, free health, and how he used the money from agriculture to do all of those things. In our constitution currently, the governors, they have no encumbrances on matters of health, education, and agric. And you said just now that you attended a public education.
Primary school, secondary school.
Those are dead right now. You don't have, it's practically, certainly not what you went for. Even, I went to primary school in the 70s and 80s, secondary school. It has even changed. So my question is that, how can we get the states at least to do that which they are already, so in terms of decentralization,
yes,
there are no excuses on education, health, and agric. What do you think, Prof?
2 responses. First, yes, there's no encumbrances, but when the central government itself is now making this a priority, then you leave room to say, okay, let them do it. And don't forget, federal government, for reasons that may be germane at that time, even at secondary school, federal government unity schools. I went to one of those myself at King's College. It was a federal. In fact, at that time that I was in King's College for my high school certificate, it was the only federal government secondary school in the whole country for boys. I think they had the second one for the Queen's College in Yaba. But in almost every state, you have federal government boys' school, federal government girls' school, secondary now.
The unity school.
You have federal government university, federal university, then you have state university. Some states you have more than 2 universities. So as long as you have this parallel something, then you give room for people to say, okay, and we both have responsibilities. So it's essentially nobody's responsibility in terms of us and them.
Yes.
But the second and more fundamental thing, and this is what I'm about to say is going to be extremely controversial, but I stand by it.
Please.
The federal government, of which I've been part, all my professional life, minister, ambassador,
chief of staff.
You see, there is, in my view, and I'm open to being controverted, the checks and balances at the federal levels, however weak, they are there. For example, nobody can be president of Nigeria and ignore the National Assembly because they have to screen your minister. They have to approve their appointment of judges and ambassadors and several MPDs. So you cannot, and your budget, they have to scrutinize it. They can tamper with it, but you have to
write your budget
for you if you allow them. Now, so then look, so there's that check and balance. However, incomplete it is. Now, judiciary, there's a federal judiciary, the Supreme Court, Court of Appeal means something. Okay? The Federal Civil Service, with all its imperfections, there's a process of appointing federal permanent secretaries. You have to go through a process. And a federal permanent secretary means something. So the legislature, the judiciary, the bureaucracy. Then there's a national press, which no president can ignore.
True.
Because, you got the television and the print.
And now social media.
Social media. Now, you look at the state level. With all due respect, state assemblies, do they provide any kind of checks and balance? Almost nothing. State judiciary, state electoral commissioner, no state media of consequence, not to mention state electoral commission. And that is why, again, this may be controversial, that state police, people are saying state police, but they must, before we do that, there must be a situation where we have to put in place checks and balance of their use. Because I grew up in the era of local government police.
Yeah.
And how I would say used, but misused by
your opponents can just drop a dead body behind your
or plant marijuana in your pocket, and they arrest you for having it.
Exactly.
And no, these are very serious matters. In principle, obviously, we need, because the policing, the proportion of the policing to the population is such that you need some other form. But we must ensure.
And then the idea of community policing is actually very...
And that's what the administration that just served last was emphasizing police reform, which an element of it should be community policing. But community policing doesn't mean that you just bring Nigerian police and put them in the community, say that's community police. No, the definition. And if we educate people more and define community police in the proper context, and then have checks and balances, of their use by the governors, many of the governors in this country are my friends over years, and I have due respect for them.
Some of them are your students.
Well, some are, including the governor of Gombe, who was even my wife's student in the School of Basic Studies at Ahmadu Bello University, and is proud of it. But so really, I have a lot of respect, but I just believe that it's not about individuals. And that's another thing. It's not about individuals.
It's about
really
the
about system that works.
Nothing personal.
Nothing personal. Works for the best interest
of our people.
And no government every government must be held accountable.
So let's move to the international level. So this is your area. You were Minister for External Affairs. As a matter of fact, before then you were the Director General of the Nigerian International Affairs Institute. NIA. And then of course you went on to become Minister and went to the United Nations, worked for Nigeria, worked for the UN in various capacities, including when you were the head of the political affairs department. I was around New York then, so I knew that this was significant. Where do you think we are today as a nation internationally? Is our respect rising or are we losing?
Well, every administration comes with its own priority.
Okay.
In terms of efforts, resources devoted to domestic, and efforts and resources assigned to the external.
Right.
I've always argued that foreign policy is not Dogon Turinchi, which may be grammar. Some people think we can even do without foreign policy. It's a mistake because we are part of the world. And you have to have a foreign policy which will be defined at home but projected abroad. And what it means is you have to define what is your interest. What do you want from the world? What do we want as a nation? Security, prosperity of our people, standing in the world, so that our voice means something. Right. So is the definition of a national interest and the articulation of it to the world, and that is the substance of foreign policy. But then you must put resources there, in order for your voice to be heard. And also, you must choose people and put them as representatives who will be worthy ambassadors and articulate properly. And I'll give you an example. One very perceptive, retired career public servant in the UK, when you have the problem between Britain and Nigeria, I was foreign minister over the DICO affairs. And they sent him deliberately to come and meet me to see how we can normalize relation.
After the incident.
The incident.
Yeah.
To normalize the relationship. And then I said, but why do you want to see me? I'm just a bloody civilian in a military government. Go and meet my bosses. He said, we are not stupid. We may make mistakes. The civil. No. This is British civil servant came to see me to normalize Anglo-Nigerian. And he said to me that I've never forgotten. He said, yes, we know who you are, but we believe that you are speaking for your country. Foreign minister. He said, but we know that you cannot speak effectively for your country if you cannot speak to your country.
Wow.
You cannot speak for your country
if you cannot speak
to your country. That means you have to be able to say what is wrong, what should not be done, and the leadership will listen. So that's the kind of caliber of people we have to send abroad. Now, give you another anecdote. 1994. I was November 4th, 1994. I was 50 years old.
Oh, wow.
Seemed like yesterday.
Exactly.
I was then, at that time, I became president of the Security Council in between.
Okay.
But the point I'm going to make is that, an anecdote only.
Okay.
For the celebration, all members of the Security Council attended my birthday celebration.
Wow.
All. Madeleine Albright became Secretary of State. Lavrov became Secretary of Foreign Minister, still Foreign Minister of Russia, but was ambassador. Yeah. We're all ambassadors. But what I'm saying is not Ibrahim Agbola Gambari that they are coming to honor. It's Nigeria as projected by, as represented at the United Nations, at the UN. So we ought to be able to say the same, you know. And that means we have to put more resources in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have to allow the Foreign Affairs to be the primary focus of our foreign policy in terms of they have the experience, at least if properly trained.
Right.
They keep the memory of what has happened before.
Institutional
memory, and the preparation of the articulation of our foreign policy and implementation. There are other agencies, you know, that because that has not happened, nature abhors a vacuum, they feel it.
Right.
But instruments of policy shouldn't be the makers of policy.
True.
You know?
Interesting.
So really, what I'm suggesting is that the world has changed, is changing, becoming more dangerous. War in Russia against Ukraine, the Gaza, Lebanon, Sudan, you know. So we can't sit back and say that's other people's business because ultimately some of the principles, for example, territorial integrity,
right,
sovereignty of countries, fundamental human rights, all these are going to affect us. So we must take foreign policy much more seriously. There may be nuances, but the fundamentals of our foreign policy is the defense of our interests and in the framework of where we are. We can't choose our neighbors.
Yeah. Of course.
So ourselves as a center
are given.
Yes. Then you have to pay attention to our neighbors. And during the Civil War, we knew that if our neighbors like Niger and Cameroon had gone with the French, who wanted to break up our country, it would be a different story. Then ECOWAS, where we've invested a lot of money and lives through ECOMOG. That must be a constant. And the African continent, of which we are. And then, of course, how to manipulate the external environment to be able to reinforce our own interests and so that people say, yeah, we are here because we are here.
Yeah.
And we cannot be ignored. We have a contribution to make. At the time, we were third largest true contributors to international peacekeeping, UN peacekeeping.
Yes. I remember that the chair of the UN peacekeeping was Nigeria for a long time.
I was for 9 years.
Exactly.
I was chairman. I believe my successors were chairman, of that UN Special Committee on Peacekeeping.
Yeah.
And then because of that too, when I was head of 2 peacekeeping operations, Angola and Darfur, a joint UN. It's precisely because they see us as part of the solution
to the global challenges.
Challenges. And when I was a UN staff, and I was special envoy of the Secretary General, including, you remember, they give me almost all the impossible cases, Iraq, Myanmar, Cyprus, Zimbabwe at that time, and then Myanmar.
It was as if they said, let him go and handle it.
But the point I want to make is that even though I was an international civil servant by that time, even though I was special, they always refer to me as a Nigerian diplomat.
Very true. Very true.
So even if I don't want to remember, they are reminding me.
And most of the time, this is the Western press.
The West will say the Nigerian diplomat, the sole Nigerian diplomat, going about trying to make. But it's a credit to our country.
Yes.
I don't take it negatively that we are contributing and finding solutions for problems in Myanmar, in Cyprus, in of course in Africa itself, and Iraq and elsewhere. That's where we must return to those recognition and respect.
Right.
And it's possible. We are the same people.
Of course.
Same country, thank God.
Yes. So still the final question on the international level, we want Nigeria to be a member of the permanent member of the Security Council. We've always aspired for it. The president has said it. This last hunger, Senator Shettima, who represented the president, said it again. Prof, how can Nigeria get it? What would be your own counsel?
First of all, I want to preface it. Nobody is just going to give it to us. Nobody is going to just say, okay, Nigeria, take it. Even when we believe rightly that we deserve, first of all, Africa deserves permanent seats in the Security Council. And if and when that happens, Nigeria has credentials. We are an international peacekeeping nation, as we mentioned earlier.
Yes.
We have been President of General Assembly, President of Security Council, President of the International Court of Justice. Teslim
Elias
was there. We have gone to peacekeeping. We have also done, because the Security Council has primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. Okay? And so if we are contributing to the capacity of the United Nations to do that, that is clearly a credential.
Yeah.
We've headed all these agencies of the UN. We are the most populous country in Africa until recently. The biggest economy are here. We are maybe now number 2. Yeah. But still, okay. But for a long time. And projection. Projection is that we will actually
get back there and even become the biggest, the third or fourth
most populous country. So it can't be ignored in an organization or organ dedicated to the preservation of
international peace and security.
And then there's another chapter of the UN, which is, I believe, is chapter 5 or 8, chapter 8, regional arrangements. In other words, this power of the Security Council is to be shared with, in conjunction with, because when you say you have primary responsibility, it doesn't mean exclusive responsibility. That can be with the regional arrangement. Now, in that regional arrangement, in the African Union, we've been part of the solution, not part of the problem. In our region, we have been part of
West Africa.
West Africa, not part of the problem. In Liberia, I make bold to say that without ECOMOG, without Nigeria's role, there would probably be no Sierra Leone, no Liberia today. So, but this is, but the permanent seats it has to be earned, because there are alternatives. We're not the only one, even in Africa. I can mention Egypt is a candidate. South Africa will be a candidate. We are a candidate. At best, we may have 2 permanent seats. At best, But you won't believe some of the countries that want to be aspiring.
So we don't want to mention
it because it's as if there are some who don't want Nigeria to be there.
Of course.
And there are others in the system who will be happy to use them to prevent us. So really, we have a lot of work. Don't forget, even non-permanent seats, anytime Nigeria wants to go there, we have to fight. In my time, in 1993, we had to go 6 ballots in the General Assembly before we got 2/3. Guess who we were competing against? Guinea-Bissau, whom we have just sent material boots, military boots to their military, but at the New York, they were fighting, but it's not them.
Of course.
It's those who want weak African representation, even as non-permanent members.
Yeah.
So I'm just using this to say, even for non-permanent members, the wahala we have to go there.
Yeah.
So now that means we have to strategize. We have to strategize. We have to blow our own trumpet, because if we don't blow it, nobody will blow it for you. You know why? They are busy blowing their own
trumpets. Thank you so much, Prof. Maybe one last question. I wanted you to give your own counsel on the state of the nation, whichever way you choose, whether you want to advise the president or the current national leaders or state, what are the things that you think should concern the president and the governors the most, considering where Nigeria is today, the situation of the economy and all of that? What would be your counsel?
Well, I'm a bit handicapped to answer your question because I have access. I have access to them. To former presidents, I have been privileged to serve. I don't think there is a Nigerian who is not a civil servant that has worked directly with 7 Nigerian presidents.
Wow.
7. From Shiv Shagari as Director General Institute of President Shagari, then President Buhari appointed minister, then General Babangida appointed me ambassadors. In between, Chief Shonekan, General Abacha of late, blessed memory.
Right.
Then General Absalam, and then President Obasanjo. And then after 35 years, when we were kicked out in 1985, President Buhari came back as a civilian president. And he always tells everybody who happens to wants to hear, I brought Gambari back after 35 years. Let him come and
witnessed that.
Let him come and suffer with me, dealing with Nigeria instead of all these global response. But really, my point is a serious one. 7 presidents. I'm not I'm neither a politician nor a soldier, nor a civil servant of Nigeria. So it's a privilege. I use that privilege. But generally speaking, any president of Nigeria must really make number one security, because as Brutus Gali said, in broader context, in agenda for peace, there can be no developments without peace. And then he said in the agenda for development, there will be no sustainable development, no durable peace without sustainable development. But then he had the third, I think it's Kofi Annan, in larger freedom, which he said there have neither be sustainable development or durable peace without democracy and the right of people to choose the government under which they want. So really the contribution every president can make to Nigeria is to secure this country, and then promote the framework to release the energy of our people so that they can master their own affairs in terms of economy. And then also, please, as a legacy, free and fair election. You remember that President Yaradua, he came through a very faulty electoral, but he admitted it. He said, look, this thing was not, so set up this electoral commission reform. I think we need also leaders who say, look, this thing is not working. This thing is not working. Let us do something about it. And so those are the kind of general things that are valid globally, but more we can domesticate it. Domesticate it.
And thank you for the way you've spoken, because this is one of the reasons why I have also actively supported this idea of an elite consensus.
Right.
And it just occurred to me that our former leaders can lead the charge, work with the incumbent at a time like this to develop a truly pan-Nigeria agenda that everybody will agree across parties, across ethnicities, religion.
And it is possible because we even have the framework for it. There's something called the National Council of State. And we must be proud of our achievements. So there are very few African countries that can assemble former presidents to even sit, however briefly, and however ceremoniously, with the previous one.
Mention it. I mean, that too.
Really,
the Council of State.
So within that Council of State, we can have within it the former heads of state. Then the former chief justices. That's why I don't want to leave this, and I don't want to leave this forum that this is to be left to former heads of states alone. No, they have a legal responsibility. Yeah. Former chief justices are there. Former governors,
current governors,
and even sit with
Senate presidents,
and all of us professionals, NGOs, think tanks, we all have a stake in the unity of this country and its stability, its security, and its progress. Okay. I would even say finally that we've been very lucky because Nigerians don't demand very much. That's why they go about their business. Yeah. That's why it has never been a pressure on enough. And there are some countries in Sudan where the price of bread rose by 20%. There was riots and the government was overthrown. But in Nigeria, the people adjust. But there may be a breaking point.
And that's what we're trying to prevent.
Because we don't want to wait till revolution takes over before those who have benefited the most from what this country has to offer, and not only the head of states, they have a responsibility to contribute to its economy so that they can even proudly say, we've made our contribution, and we've left the country stronger, more prosperous, and more democratic than we found it.
Than it is. Excellent point. I'm pleased to stop. Thank you so much. For actually validating some of the things that, some of us have been saying, in terms of the fact that, look, what is the point of an elite? Why are we exposed? Why did God bless us with all the things that he has given us if we cannot transform, our people? Thank you so much, Professor Ibrahim Agbola Gambari, and let's remind our viewers that he's an Ilorin prince, but who has refused to, you refused to stake your reality. But I think Nigeria's public service and international public service has been a benefit of it. Once again, happy 80th birthday.
Thank you.
And we thank you for your service, especially to Nigeria, but also internationally. And we hope and pray that God will give you more long life and prosperity.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a pleasure. And for reminding me that I'm now 80. I belong to that group of elder statesmen.
Exactly. Thank you so much for coming to Inside Sources. And that is it, another edition of Inside Sources. Like we always say, Nigeria will prevail. We believe it. That is why we are here. And I believe that in my time, that will happen. That great destiny of Nigeria will be realized. Thank you for watching. My name is Laulu Akode. I'll see you again at the next edition by the grace of God.